old Zen story. It's about a monk called Roshi Bobo, which in English means Master of Fuck. Now, the title shouldn't throw anyone and may not mean exactly what people think, but there's one thing you can say about the Master of Fuck, that this fuck is an extraordinary one like none that ever was before. The whole story concerns a young man, 15 years of age, whose parents sent him to a Zen monastery to become a monk and, of course, to receive enlightenment. He was a fairly bright young man, good-looking, obedient, and as far as anyone could see, good material. But after a few years, nothing seemed to happen. He didn't seem to be getting anywhere. 5 years passed, nothing. 10, and even his masters began to despair of him. Finally, after 15 years, he decided that he didn't have it in him. He didn't have what it takes, and he would go out and enjoy earthly life, be a man of the world if he couldn't be a monk. So he slipped out one night with his bag and baggage, and he wandered into the red light district. And there he encountered a girl, seemed to him like a geisha, and he went to bed with her immediately. Well, it was his first experience with a woman, and instead of being awkward, though, and embarrassed and shy and so on, he seemed to be very adept. His senses were highly attuned from his Zen training. He was aware of her body, the touch, the smell, and everything. Even when the clothes dropped to the floor, created a sensation in him. So, in the midst of this marvelous experience, he suddenly has what he couldn't get in the monastery, the experience of Satori. He saw things as they are and were and always will be, once and forever, clearly, which is really what enlightenment is all about, don't you know? The important thing was that he had allowed himself to go to the very end of doubt and despair. Had he not, you see, this would never have happened. But he went to the very end of the tunnel and saw the light. And this is, of course, something that does not happen to people in psychoanalysis. They may be adapted to our corrupt world when they're finished, but they never reach Satori, do you see? And they never see things as they really are, in my opinion. And of course, there's another aspect to it, and a very wonderful one. It is like William Blake's idea of reaching heaven through hell. It doesn't matter what road you take to reach paradise. And beside that, even, one might say that paradise is not even just around the corner, but right under your nose, if you happen to be lucky and aware enough, And I think that's the great burden of it, that one should, how shall I say, accept his doubts completely, as the Buddha once advised, Accept despair and anguish and frustration and see it through. Don't go to a doctor. Don't go to an analyst, above all. By the way, up there is one of my favorite men, here, Hermann Hesse. When I look at him here, it reminds me of Goldmund or Narcissus, which is almost the two sides of himself. The monkish one and the artist. And as you remember in that book, he makes the monk confess to the artist that he is the better one, that his was a greater life, a more meaningful life. Which is very interesting, because the artist led a sort of a wild, profligate life of adventure, women and everything. and the monk is austere and righteous and so on. And Hess makes the monk say to him, you know, yours was after all the better one, and even meaning the more spiritual one too.